Hello and welcome to today's special midday session celebrating the 10th anniversary of the American College of Sports Medicine's American Fitness Index. My name's Walt Thompson and I have had the privilege of being the chair of the American Fitness Index Advisory Board for about the past 10 years, I think. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be moderating today's exciting panel presentation. Governor John Hickenlooper is a former geologist and entrepreneur who recently added author to his resume with the publication of his memoir, The Opposite of Woe, My Life in Beer and Politics. I can relate to both of those. Since taking office in 2011, the governor and his team have endeavored to make Colorado the most pro-business state with the highest environmental and ethical standards. Please join me in welcoming the former mayor of Denver and the number 7 city on the American Fitness Index, and now the governor of the great state of Colorado, the Honorable John Hickenlooper.
So, and I will only do I'm going to spend just a few minutes in a kind of a welcome, because I know you guys have a panel here that's going to, we usually say, my wife throws in the governor's mansion, throws a dance party about every 3 or 4 months, and she calls it the Hick-Ass Dance Party. So I'm sure you're going to have a Hick-Ass panel here. We've tried to make Colorado the most pro-business state with the highest ethical standards, the highest environmental standards. We've also tried to make it the healthiest state. And, you know, health is so widely misunderstood by so many people. And it's not just one thing. It really is an approach to life, a quality of life. And there are a number of studies, and you guys are out in front of a lot of this. I was reading through some of your literature, but that allows, when you look at kids and how well they retain information in elementary school, middle school, if they exercise every day, there are study after study, the New Trier school system in Illinois, and a bunch of them that really strongly suggest that not only are you, having your body get healthy, but it allows your mind to be more successful as well. And we took a few basic approaches to this is to try and get everybody connected. Actually, today we're rolling out a mapping system that'll be, mobile enhanced, friendly to your cell phone, but we'll have 39,000 miles of hiking and biking trails and all-purpose trails in the state of Colorado that used to be on a dozen different guidebooks and databases, have them all in one place. And once we get it figured out, we're not quite there yet, but once we get it figured out, you'll be able to file not just photographs on the hike you took or the bicycle ride you took, but you'll be able to file text information. You'll be able to attach audio files and be able to go back years later and visit that experience you had. And our hope is we're going to try and fan the flames with social media, that we'll get more kids kind of competing with each other and talking to each other. This also allow you to talk to people further down the trail. So if you, now they'd have to respond to you, they would make that choice, but it would allow you to ask, is it still snowing on the other side of the pass, which in Colorado sometimes can be an issue at this time of year. We really look at specific goals wherever we can. Our goals now is in the next 5 years to make sure there are 150,000 young people that do not become obese. And we are the thinnest state in the country, but if you go back 25 years and look at where we were then and where we are now, if you take where Colorado is now, we would have been one of the most obese states in the entire country 25 years ago. And that is a sobering statistic for any of us to recognize. We have a bike czar in the state of Colorado, a guy named Ken Gart, who has been doing this for the last 3 years, probably 40 hours a week. His family had Gart Sports, very successful small business empire. As the bike czar, and he got paid. I paid him $1 a year the first year, but he did such a great job. $2, I doubled it, and then this year I doubled it again up to $4. He likes to say that biking isn't just for mammals, MAMILS. That's middle-aged men in Lycra. And it's not just about trails and hiking. We want to increase physical activity standards for kids at all ages, from childcare, early childhood education, all the way up through. We'd love to embrace some of the best practices that we see in whether it's Europe or Australia, parts of Asia, trying to find a way that we can get every kid to walk a mile every day. We've tried that in a couple of small pilots with somewhat limited success yet, but great journeys are always started with a single step. We're very focused on what we call Colorado the Beautiful, and that is in addition to the mapping project, which actually also allows us to see all of our public lands, all of our open spaces, what kind of land they are and how well protected they are, but allows us also to Colorado Beautiful imagine, and we want to do this in one generation, but in 20 years we want to make sure that every single child and adult in this state is within a 10-minute walk of a green space of some sort, maybe a little pocket park, could be just a parkway somewhere, but some place where they can walk in a place or even just sit and think in a place that is not pushing them. We are looking relentlessly at cardiovascular health. You tie that in with tobacco prevention and cessation programs and trying to find more funding for that. I think we've gotten trans fats out of pretty much all of our schools, like many states. But it really is, if you're going to be and even have the aspiration to be the healthiest state, you need all hands on deck. Our lieutenant governor is going to try and come here today. She couldn't. But her name is Donna Lynn. She's the Lieutenant Governor and Chief Operating Officer of the state of Colorado. She was previously the Executive Vice President of Kaiser Permanente. So she was in charge of pretty much everything outside California. She ran about $11 billion worth of that enterprise. And her focus really was on prevention and helping people get, take a firmer responsibility for their own physical condition and their own health care. And I think that's going to be the way of the future. And her efforts tied in with our, the Colorado the Beautiful and our statewide programs. I hope, and we're measuring everything, I hope we'll be able to come back to you in 4 years and say, here's where we were, here's what we did, and we really changed this curve. I also want to just finish by just, Walt mentioned my book that I wrote, came out a year ago, called The Opposite of Woe. Because sometimes it seems this is the most difficult of all the challenges we face, right? Are we cutting back Medicaid? Is Washington going crazy? When I first ran for mayor in 2003, and I'd never ran for student council or class president, and many of my young volunteers got discouraged that we didn't seem to move up in the polls. We were 3 or 4 or 5% for a couple months. And I carried this tattered clipping in my wallet from the Denver Post about a professor of public speaking at the University of Wyoming talking about why the use of opposites close together was so powerful in public speaking. And she said, if you're going to talk about the agony, talk about the ecstasy. If you're going to talk about the worst of times, talk about the best of times. She asked her class, what's the opposite of despair? Kid raised her hand and goes, joy. She goes, exactly. You want people to feel despair, use joy in the same sentence. You get emotional impact from the proximity. Then she said, what's the opposite of woe? And the kid way in the back goes, giddy up. And I think in most, not all, but in most situations, when things aren't going well, the opposite of woe really is to giddy up and just work harder. And hopefully, I know you guys recognize that we need a lot of work in the years to come. And certainly you should think of Colorado as your active partner. Thank you.
We should all live in states that have such a great governor as this guy, right? Yeah. I live in the state of Georgia, and we love our food down there. So does our governor. Thank you so much, Governor Hickenlooper, for your gracious and inspiring welcome to our ACSM members. On behalf of the American College of Sports Medicine, I'd like to present to you the ACSM Champion Award. The American College of Sports Medicine bestows its Champion Award on individuals and organizations that support the college's mission by actively championing the benefits of physical activity, fitness, and healthy lifestyles within our communities. Thank you, Governor Hickenlooper, for all that you've done as the former mayor of Denver and continuing to do as the governor of Colorado. This is Colorado, right? There's a joke about that. I can't share it with you. To advocate for healthy lifestyles now and in the future. So thank you so much. I'd like to invite Dr. Liz Joy, the president of the American College of Sports Medicine, to come forward to present this award to you. Thank you so much. One more time for the great governor of Colorado. We are all aware that physical inactivity and obesity are in epidemic proportions in the United States and around the world. The result is an increasing prevalence of many chronic diseases. Meanwhile, healthcare expenditures associated with physical inactivity and obesity continue to rise. ACSM believes the key fundamentals for improving physical activity behaviors involve setting policies and recommendations that better enable individuals and communities to engage in physical activity as part of a healthier lifestyle. With this background in mind, ACSM created and launched the American College of Sports Medicine American Fitness Index program with support from the Anthem Foundation 10 years ago. The American Fitness Index Data Report measures the state of the health and fitness at the local community level for the 50 largest communities and metropolitan statistical areas. With these data, cities can compare their health status and fitness attributes to other cities. Additionally, each city can use the materials, resources, and community connections associated with the program to help their city improve its health, fitness, and quality of life. This report issues a call to action to improve the overall health, fitness, and quality of life in the United States. On May the 16th, we released the 2017 AFI Data Report. This is our 10th edition of this valuable report, which can be downloaded free from AmericanFitnessIndex.org. We have identified some best practices at the community level to improve fitness. These might include more park spaces, an environment conducive to physical activity, recreational facilities, programs, and policies. Moreover, we are connecting scientific knowledge with partners, alliances, and policies that actually work. As an organization and through our membership, the American College of Sports Medicine is uniquely positioned to lend its expertise in sports medicine and exercise science to promote a more physically active society. Now that I've introduced the American Fitness Index program, let's start the dialogue with some esteemed colleagues and start to learn more about how to create a culture of health in a city. I'll be asking each of the panelists questions, and others can jump in, that's you, can jump in with your additional thoughts. We'll be passing out index cards to the audience, so please write down any question you have for our guests today. So let's get started. First, we're very fortunate to have with us Happy Haynes, Deputy Mayor of this beautiful city of Denver. The Honorable Deputy Mayor Haynes is also the executive director of the Denver Parks and Recreation. Denver ranked number 7 on the American Fitness Index report, and we're excited to learn more about some of the reasons why they do so well each year. Ms. Haynes. Also speaking today is Jeff Sepik, Vice President for Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield in Colorado. Mr. Sepik will be sharing his expertise on how employers and workplace wellness contribute to healthy cities. I'd like to add that the Anthem Foundation, the philanthropic arm of Anthem, has supported the American Fitness Index for the last 10 years and has invested over $1 million to champion healthy cities. Mr. Sepik. Finally, I'd like to also recognize my fellow AFI Advisory Board member and the current president of the American College of Sports Medicine, Dr. Liz Joy. Dr. Joy is the medical director for Community Health and Food and Nutrition at Intermountain Healthcare in Salt Lake City, which was ranked number 9, not number 7, but number 9 in the American Fitness Index in 2017. I should tell you, I'm from Atlanta. We were 17. Okay, I'll confess that. For a lot of different reasons, we're number 17. Can't seem to move from there. In addition, Dr. Joy practices family medicine and sports medicine at the Salt Lake Clinic Live Well Center, and we'll be speaking about the many ways physicians can be integrated into healthy cities. Dr. Liz Joy. So Paul will be passing out cards, or they already have them? You already have them. Great. So, okay, so you can, if you have questions, who's going to be collecting them?
We'll be collecting them as we go.
These guys down here will be collecting, and Monty back there will be collecting the questions from you. So the first question that I have goes to Dr. Joy. So how can physicians act as role models for improving community health?
Well, I really think it's more about, maybe a better question is how can physicians and healthcare systems, really impact community health? And, at an individual physician level, there's a lot of things that can be done. I mean, first and foremost, they need to be role models as it relates to healthy lifestyles, for their clinical staff, for their patients, for their families and their communities. That's really a part of, you should practice what you preach, and if we flip it around, you preach what you practice. So if we want our physicians to counsel their patients about the importance of physical activity to maintain health and to manage disease and to improve quality of life, they're more likely to do that if they themselves are physically active. So I think a great way they can influence community health is by being active themselves. There's a great program that was started by David Sabgir, who's a cardiologist, called Walk with a Doc. And Walk with a Doc is in metropolitan areas and states, even countries now around the world. So if you don't know about Walk with a Doc and how clinicians and their teams and their clinical practices can be involved in promoting active lifestyles, I'd encourage you to take a look. But at a healthcare system, there's even more that can be done. And for, of course, nonprofit healthcare systems like Intermountain Healthcare, where I work, we have a community benefit obligation. That's, it sounds kind of bad to say that, but we feel like it's not just an obligation from, maintaining our nonprofit status and from an IRS perspective, but really how do we give back to our community? And we know that in this day and age where healthcare costs are skyrocketing, where 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, that if we don't address the root cause of what's leading to chronic conditions like prediabetes, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, cancer, then we're just going to fall further and further behind. And diabetes alone is like bankrupting our healthcare system. We have to do something about it. So Intermountain is really investing in that. We are Similar to what Governor Hickenlooper was talking about, we also have a Healthy Hike app, that can be downloaded, and people can just hit their Intermountain Health Hub, and they can find, a local hiking trail or walking trail or a local park, that they can go and be active in. Oh, wow, there's so many other things, both from a healthy eating and a physical activity perspective that the healthcare system is doing, because we know that, investing at that level improves the health of our overall community, improves the health of our patients, and it lowers incident disease and healthcare costs. And that's what creates a healthy economy, and a healthy state, and it's why employers want to move to your state. So I can tell you that we're absolutely invested in doing that.
Thanks, Liz. Jeff, so you must have a comment about this too, because you work in the industry, right?
I do. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Thank you. Yes, as an employer, obviously Anthem takes our role seriously as well, and I'm honored to be on such a distinguished panel. I'm fairly certain I was invited only because I've had so many sports injuries, and I'm really familiar with sports medicine and the fine orthopedic surgeons many times over. I think when I look at things as a VP at Anthem, not only is what we do as an employer, but what our employer clients are looking for and how they create a culture, I think it starts at the top, and it really needs to be, each employer has to decide, are they committed to a culture of wellness? Liz mentioned role models, and I think you really need a buy-in from the very beginning that we feel that having a culture of wellness is important. We feel that this will not only make our employees healthier, happier, and more productive, but we're willing to support it, and we're willing to support it at all levels of an organization. So where I see where employers are really making a difference is, they have that commitment at the top. They are going to create a culture. They have a consistency in message. So throughout the organization, there's a commitment that we are trying to encourage and foster a healthy workforce. It's reinforced over time. So it's not just, wow, we're going to do a walking challenge and then that's the end of it. It has to be repetitive. It has to be consistent. It has to be staged and timed in such a manner that the associates get used to, well, this must be the time of the week or the month or whatever that we're going to have our wellness message, and it has to be reinforced. And I think all levels of the organization have to be committed to it. So, my boss, the president here, is an avid cyclist. I am an avid cyclist. Our mid-level managers are very involved in health, our line-level staff. So it really has to be reinforced throughout all levels of an organization. And then I think the last comment just in general is that you have to make it easily accessible. So our world is evolving dramatically. There are some folks that we work with that still like to communicate by phone. There are some that won't ever communicate by phone, and if it's not on their smartphone through application, it never gets used. They do only text, or they do the website. But it has to be a consistent message, and it has to be available in all mediums. You have to make it easily accessible to everyone, whatever their chosen medium is, so that message can get across and can be reinforced and can be consistently applied.
Great, thank you. Happy to have a different question for you, if you don't mind, but I have to kind of set this up.
Okay.
Because you may be a little disappointed in my question. So the American Fitness Index is composed of really two sets of indices. One is a personal health indicators, and the other are what we call community or environmental indicators. And there's 31 line items, pretty much split evenly between the two, and each one of those line items is then weighted relative to its importance. So we have the overall American Fitness Index, and we didn't really go about trying to rank the cities. The press kind of made us do that, although we're kind of glad we did because there's a lot of competition now between cities. But what it also has allowed us to do is we can rank our cities by just their personal health indicators, or just by their community or environmental indicators, or what we prefer to do with the American Fitness Index is to combine the two. So I set that up for you because Denver, as I mentioned, was ranked number 7 in the 2017 American Fitness Index, but number 2 behind San Jose for personal health indicators. That's good news. but number 27 for community or environmental indicators. Washington, D.C. was number 1 for community and environmental indicators. Minneapolis was number 1 city, number 2 city was Washington, D.C. in our overall American Fitness Index. So having said that, I know that kind of disappoints you probably, being in Department of Rec and Parks, yeah. And I may not be invited back to Denver. But what is the role of the mayor's office? So you're at number 27 out of 50. So what is the role of the mayor's office to make significant changes in the community or environment?
Thank you for, okay, this isn't.
We'll just
so
swap
we'll,
that, but you
we'll
and I will
share.
share.
Yeah. So thank you for that question. And I did note, by the way, I noted that in 2016, we ranked number 3, and we've slipped. So before I started getting the big head about ranking number 7, I realized that we've actually decreased in our ranking from one year to the next. And environmental factors are really important, and I can almost pinpoint what those things are, and many of those fall into my realm. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But the mayor can play an extraordinary role, and you saw in many ways the example of that just a few moments ago when the governor spoke. That what the mayor has above all other things, or our city leaders, is the bully pulpit. He has the attention of the community. He has the media attention. When he speaks, people listen. And that is, you can't underestimate the value and the power that brings in terms of conveying a message and setting a tone for a city and for his own administration. You hit on something, Liz, about setting an example, and I think that's really important for a mayor to do, and our mayor has done that. And he was describing to me when I first took this job, not 2 years ago, how he discovered that he was pre-diabetic, and after an examination, and it surprised him, and it caused him to make some changes in his diet and in his habits, and so now all kinds of things in terms of his examples. He has a set of individuals who serve as his bodyguards, and I know from being in the city for many years that being the mayor's bodyguard generally meant sitting in the chair outside the office most of the day. His bodyguards today are very different. He runs them up and down the stairs, so the mayor, like I do with my staff, if you want to walk and talk with me, you're going to be on the stairs. And so there are just small things like that help him to establish, to be an example. The second thing is a mayor really can broadly define health. And we're very fortunate in Denver that our mayor, in some years, in one of his past lives, actually facilitated Healthy Communities efforts across the state of Colorado. So he understands what a very broad definition of health is, which includes those personal indicators as well as the environment, as well as issues like what kind of access do people have to healthy environments, to recreation centers, to their nearby parks, to health care, and so on. And so having a broad perspective and helping to actually define for a community what is health going to look like for Denver. It's going to be a combination of factors, and then he can begin to share what those are and be open to sharing the bad news along with the good news. It helps to be competitive too. Because now, and we all are, so now that I know we're number 7 and we dropped, I want to know who's ahead of us and how we beat them. And that goes a long way, and I think that's a typical feature or a trait for those of us who are involved in sports medicine, know people who are very competitive at various levels. All of these things matter when it comes to defining health for a community and getting people rallied to the cause.
Mm-hmm. It's always beneficial to have a leader who also believes in what he or she is doing, right? We had a similar experience in 2011 The first year and the second year, and maybe even the third year of the American Fitness Index report, Oklahoma City was number 50. And Mayor Mick Cornett called us. And we thought that he was going to be very angry, you know. Do you know Mick Cornett? And it's okay for me to talk about this because he talks about it all the time. When he took office, he weighed nearly 300 pounds. I mean, he was morbidly obese. When he called us, he wanted to find out, you know, how he could get his city off of the bottom of our list. And we told him, you know, one of the best ways is for you to be a role model. Well, he put himself on a diet. He put the city on a diet, and they're no longer number 50. They're still hovering around 46 or 47 because they have some other community indicators that need to be changed. And there's also community-wide personal indicators that need to be changed. But he's doing some great work there. And so if you ever see a before and after, I would say before AFI, after AFI picture of Mayor Cornett, you wouldn't be able to recognize the difference. Yeah.
He became president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors.
He did, and now to the competition, it's even keener. We stay in touch with Mayor Cornett because he's very interested in finding out some other ways in which they can change both personal indicators and the community indicators. Liz, back to you. So can you already did share, and this is going to be bad news for you too, not you personally, but where you're from. Because there is some competition in the community or health indicators. Denver was number 27, Salt Lake City 28th. So what is it that the medical community, you've already mentioned what Intermountain Health does, but what about all the other health systems and all the other family docs that live in Salt Lake City? How can they make some significant changes to significantly impact the personal health indicators?
That's a good question. Intermountain has 22 hospitals, across the state of Utah, and about 70% of Utahns are, in fact, receive care at Intermountain healthcare facilities. And so what Intermountain does tends to push and drive, the work of other healthcare systems, which are much smaller, have a much smaller percentage of the market, as well as some of the more private practitioners, which, in any city are getting fewer and fewer. It's too expensive to practice that way. And, and it's competitive in that regard. And so, I do think what Intermountain does in the community health arena and their investments, does have an influence on other practitioners as they try and remain competitive in the marketplace, for sure. And again, I would go back to, at least from a fitness perspective, it's getting people to, not just talk the talk, but actually walk the walk. And we're certainly talking about the American Fitness Index, but, healthy behaviors tend to cluster together. And we know that people who are more physically active are also more likely to be healthier eaters, to manage their stress better, to get adequate sleep. So when we, look at, health promotion and wellness, it's a very holistic perspective. And, I'll give you a couple other examples of kind of health promotion, wellness, type of activities that we have engaged in recently. We just recently created a healthy eating environment at all of our facilities. I mean, we are the largest private employer in the state. So, we have a public health impact, when we change things even within our own organization. And we removed all the sugar soda and all the candy from all of our cafeterias, our cafes, our staff lounges, and our vending, to create a healthier eating environment for our employees, for our visitors and guests and patients. We're installing community gardens, at our hospitals. We water a lot of lawn. And guess what? We're a desert. And so not only does it conserve water, but it's also creating access to healthier foods, fresh fruits and vegetables. And of course, we know that community gardens are also opportunities for physical activity. And so we're encouraging both our employees and our surrounding communities, to access our community gardens, which are based in our facilities. we're encouraging hospital administrators to host farmers markets, at our hospitals during the appropriate seasons. So there are lots of things that we're doing that are really aimed around kind of that entire healthy lifestyle paradigm. And I think, again, what Intermountain does helps the communities it serves, which is almost the entire state, but it's also pushing our competitors, again, in this competitive way, to also invest in that as well, because they want to remain competitive in the marketplace.
And Jeff, a similar question to you, because you're really interested in keeping employees well, right?
We are.
So, yeah, so Anthem has created a number of wellness programs, and that's kind of related to what Liz was talking about, because Intermountain is doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about some of the Anthem programs.
Well, a couple of things we're trying to do, and I'll limit it to 3 areas. There's a lot of things that we could talk about, but one, it just starts with kind of a community involvement within our own employees and within our own company. So, as an Anthem Foundation, we're very proud to support this fine organization we have for 10 years, and we will continue to do so. But our employees also get very, very involved in the community. We have 2,000 associates at 700 Broadway. We do log community involvement hours, and we give paid time off for those who are involved in the community. So again, as a role model and as a philosophy, we want to make sure that that percolates to all of our employees. Our foundation has supported a program called Triple Play, which Boys and Girls Club is involved with, that gets 13,000 youth out being active, playing in games and engaged. So we support financially areas in the community. I happen to be the bike captain for our team at the Bike MS. So National Multiple Sclerosis Society has a bike ride every year. I've done it 26 years, and I'm the captain for Anthem's team. And it was really gratifying last year when we really stepped up and became the title sponsor. To have a team of 62 Anthem associates, all in matching Anthem jerseys, out biking on 2 days in the end of June. The ride comes up in 3 weeks from now, and I'll be out there again with 70 or so of my associates riding to Fort Collins and back. So we just talk about what can we do within our own community, within the Anthem community, and within our broader Denver and Colorado community to enforce that message of wellness. And then we also look, what can we do for our employers? And both Liz and Happy have brought up diabetes, and diabetes is unbelievably expensive. It's unbelievably pervasive. And one of the things we thought is we as a health plan are trying to do a good job of treating it at the point someone is diabetic. But could we be doing more to try and do it in advance for pre-diabetes programs? And so we instituted in Colorado a program for all of our business, fully insured in ASO, a program that Anthem would pay for to identify pre-diabetes and to institute coaching programs, both telephonic, online, as well as in person, to get people engaged at a point where they're not diabetic yet, but they're showing the signs of being diabetic. And if the path isn't altered, they will become diabetic, and they will be expensive to us as a plan or to our self-funded clients. So that's just one instance we've done. And then the last thing is just around transparency. I think healthcare is just incredibly complicated.
Turns out.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out what something will cost. And so we were a leader about 10 years ago in introducing ways to try and make it more transparent to our clients and to our members. To at least know if you're going into a major event, what that episode of care is likely to cost. It's been adopted by the entire Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. I personally have used it when I needed a knee replacement to know, what are the quality indicators? What is this expected to cost me from beginning to end, including pre-testing, including the surgery, anesthesia, the hospital stay, the physical therapy? Like, how can we get a little bit more peek behind the covers as to what you're in for? Because again, an educated consumer, we feel, leads to better outcomes. We feel it'll choose likely the highest quality or typically in the lower cost range because they do it a lot and they do it really well. So that's just a few examples.
Yeah, that's great. Happy, I have an interesting question for you. It's kind of related to the last question I asked. And that is, what's the biggest challenge that you have in the mayor's office to make these significant changes that you've already talked about, these significant changes in the environment, in the Denver area? What are some of the biggest challenges that you have?
I'm glad you asked that. And so much of it is information. We're having conversations right now in a city like Denver where we're experiencing explosive growth. We've lost ground, without doing a thing, because of an increase in population, and therefore the per capita parkland has gone down. And so the overall number of acres in a city that's growing and where land costs are getting higher are really, really huge challenges. And it challenges us in terms of the creativity we have around thinking, because we think of parks, for example, in an open space and very a square of grass, or so we're having to be much more creative about where are these open spaces that provide opportunities for people to exercise and to get fitness and to have fun. And I'll go back to what we've been talking about for a little while. I'd like to tell people, as the head of the department, I'm the head of the Department of Fun for the city. That's my job, to promote fun and to and at the heart of what we're talking about, it really is that idea, that notion of fun and enjoyment. If people feel that getting fit is a burden and a sacrifice that they have to make, it's going to be very hard to get people to move. And so part of it is providing that access. And we're having to be very creative about and getting into partnerships around how development is occurring. What are we defining as open space? How do we provide better opportunities for people to use open spaces that are there that we just haven't thought of as places? Downtown games, smaller courts, and places where people right in the middle of downtown could go out and have a game of 3-on-3, or the small, I'm forgetting what they call the little mini soccer fields that we're now putting on some of our tennis courts. That all of those kinds of ideas that are getting more involved. For our young people who are attached to their screens, and I've realized, I serve on the Board of Education for Denver Public Schools, as well as my job in the city. And we know we're not going to get kids away from the screens as much as I would like to see it. So we're using the ideas, and when that Pokemon thing caught on, I was like, yeah, get them into the parks, make the game in the parks, use the technology. I'd like to get every one of our kids, fitted with one of the devices, the Fitbits, because they like those. And if that makes them walk around and check their wrist every few minutes, I'm really good with that. So there are a lot of things that we can do to begin to change some of those environmental factors. At the end of the day, we're going to have to make some commitments, however, about what kind of city we want. And that is the role that the mayor plays of setting the goals, providing information, letting folks know this is where we stand, and we may need support. We may need additional resources to help ensure that we've got the parks and the right venues. So a lot of people find out about being pre-diabetic at the doctor's office, but a lot of our folks aren't using those resources, and doctors' offices and access to health care is a struggle. No reason why we can't be using our recreation centers and other places that people like to go. Why not our grocery stores? I mean, many more of them are carrying healthier foods and have natural food sections and so on. Why not right there when you go to the grocery store, if the guilt factor, if nothing else, that, you're, instead of buying all those chips, maybe somebody there is reminding you to pick up a few other things and to go to the produce section. So to me, that idea of creativity and setting the environment so that businesses and schools and other institutions, and it really boils down to partnerships. We can't do it alone. Doctors can't do it alone. And so we need to create the kinds of partnerships that when we look at each other and say, we've got a similar problem, we have a similar challenge, and by putting our resources and our creativity together, we can come up with some very unique and creative ways to get people engaged and make the commitments and put the resources where they need to be.
I'm going to stay with you with another question, because what we found in our experience is to make changes in the community, there's one of two ways to do that. Rarely is it, well, sometimes it's kind of a bipartisan thing, but we found that we can approach the mayor, and in Denver's case, that's easy to do because the mayor is very supportive of physical activity, but if you live in a city like mine, in Atlanta, the mayor is not as interested in physical activity, although he did open up all the recreation centers the previous mayor closed, but that's a different political story. So, Mike, there's two ways. One is a grassroots level, right? Grassroots organizations getting together and putting pressure on the mayor's office, then there's the mayor's office. So do you have any experience with grassroots organizations that have come to you and say, look, we need to make some significant changes and we need to make them now?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, I was going to use one of the great examples of partnerships in a grassroots effort is an RX for Parks program that we've initiated. It came out of a neighborhood in our community is one of the lowest income. Neighbors were challenged. The park that they had nearby had lots of problems. They didn't feel it was safe. There was drug dealing going on. So they came to the city and said, we can't use our park. We need you to step up. We need some changes here, and we want to be healthier. We need help. And so we partnered with the Trust for Public Land and with some with Denver Health and with some other organizations. But this was driven by a woman in the neighborhood and her neighbors who was a literal force of nature. And she wasn't going to back down on any folks. And as a result, the commitments and the investments that the city and others have made in that neighborhood, in the parks and the facilities around that neighborhood have really been inspiring. And it took just, a couple of neighbors. We have a parent organization that demanded healthier food in the schools, and that kids weren't eating breakfast, bad idea. And we had rules. Well, teachers didn't want them bringing food in the classroom, and so kids weren't eating. And they demanded that we make some changes. We tried some pilots, and guess what? Kids providing food, healthy foods in the classroom in the morning wasn't disruptive. And in fact, because kids were eating breakfast, they were less disruptive. And this was all a grassroots parent organization that just demanded some changes and got people's attention. And that really makes a difference.
Yeah, totally. Grassroots organizations are incredibly important. I know in Atlanta, our mayor was not very physically active oriented, but he got tired, literally tired, of a certain person visiting his office and demanding more bike lanes. And if you've ever been to Atlanta, all of our streets are 4 lanes, 2 in each direction. The sidewalks are about that wide, not conducive to physical activity. But we kept bugging him and said, look, you need to put in more bike lanes. And it seemed like overnight there was bike lanes. Unfortunately, the 4 lanes went to 2 lanes and the lights weren't synchronized, so now we have a lot of traffic problems. But even if you go down the famous Peachtree Street in Atlanta, there are bike lanes. So grassroots organizations can do a lot of good stuff. Audience question, if you don't mind, for all 3 of you. What would be your suggestions for towns or cities or communities that would like to promote physical activity but struggle with environmental challenges like pollution?
I'll take that one. So I think in the most recent State of the Air report, Utah ranked, definitely in the top 10 for short-term particulate pollution. And we are victims of our geography. We live in a big, gigantic bowl, with mountain ranges on either side, and 80% of our state's population lives between Ogden and Provo. So we have all of our population density in an area that is, at risk for, inverted temperatures, which creates a warm air lid, particularly in the winter, thereby trapping, all of the pollutants close to the ground. And I actually co-chair our air quality and health efforts at Intermountain as medical director for community health. And it has an influence, on our score. Because, we actually encourage people not to exercise outdoors when the air quality is bad. And yeah, it can be bad in the winter because of those inverted temperatures, but we also have a summer ozone problem. And so, we're trying to really manage the public health messages between outdoor physical activity, which we really want to promote, along with challenging environmental conditions, because of our topography. So we're trying to talk to people about alternatives. We do have public health messages about exercising earlier in the day, not exercising outdoors during periods of time when the traffic is highest. So between, say, 7 in the morning and 9 in the morning, and then at the end of the day between 4 and 6. Find other times of the day to exercise, or go to a higher altitude, where you are less at risk for being being exposed to bad air quality, or exercise indoors. So I think it's about giving people alternative messages. It's the same as if somebody is injured. If we say you hurt your shoulder, well, maybe you take a break from tennis and you ride the bike. Or if your knee is hurting because of osteoarthritis, maybe you swim instead of run. I think it's not telling people not to be active, but it's giving them some alternatives to activity.
Great. Headline. Mayor Mick Cornett announced today he's running for governor. So maybe he'll put the entire state of Oklahoma on a diet. I don't know. We have time for one more question. It's an intriguing question because we haven't talked about policy yet. And I'm just going to read the card because it's a hard-hitting series of questions, but something that's very, very important. One of the policy questions we have on the American Fitness Index is how much physical education is required by either your local government or your state government. So this is related to that. Why isn't health education and physically active lifestyles a subject in our school programs? Is it all about test scores? Is it all about funding? What about our teachers not doing their duty as being role models? Told you it was a hard question.
So I'm going to start with
Good
that.
for you.
As a person who sits on a local school board, and where we've wrestled with this issue, we had some proposed legislation. Our school district, in fact, lobbied against this a very strict requirement for a lot of reasons. I mean, school districts are strapped. And test scores do matter, and things that get tested, you know the old saying, what gets measured gets done. And so the pressure in public education has been, make sure these kids are ready for college and they're reading and they're doing math and they're doing other things. And we forget in the process that their ability to actually do well at those things is directly correlated to their their health and their well-being. But it's so hard, even those of us who know, and we've seen the data. I mean, the data is so clear. And yet, there are only so many hours in a day, and if you're being required to show results around reading and math, that's where you're going to put your emphasis. It's clear. And so what we have done, short of mandates, because teachers and people who are in the classroom will tell you, every time they look around, they got somebody's mandated something else that they've got to do, and they're trying to figure out how many in that same number of hours a day they're supposed to do all of that. So I agree about the examples, and what we have promoted are some best practices. And I think when people find folks reaching success from best practices, then they want to emulate that. So the example idea is a really powerful one. And so we've given some incentives for some schools without mandating physical education. What we said was, we'll give you some extra resources. And we passed, by the way, in our city, a mill levy, an additional mill levy just recently to add more resources for physical education so that schools who were having to make a trade-off didn't have to make that unholy trade-off. And setting up best practices. So teachers who were figuring out how to use recess, how to use physical activity within their classrooms, partnerships with I forgot the name of the organization, the
Playworks.
Playworks, thank you. They were achieving amazing results in reading and in math because they were investing in the play and in the physical. And so that catches on when you're highlighting those best practices and what's allowing them to get those results and recognizing that they support one another. You can begin to make a difference without focusing entirely on the policy level. So both have to come. People have to see the advantages, and then the policy has to match it. And I think they both go hand in hand.
And I want to add to that, that's the power of partnerships, right? And having, a healthcare system that's invested in the health of the community, for example, is we support Playworks in our communities financially through our community benefit program. We support Girls on the Run, in our communities through our insurance company. And we have supported other school-based physical activity programs. We actually, in fact, developed our own school-based physical activity program called Step Express, recognizing that there are limited resources. So what can we do? How can we partner, with the schools, with our State Department of Education, to develop, curriculum that is supporting physically active lifestyles for kids? So back to your previous point, it's all about partnerships.
Yeah, I agree. My colleagues did a great job describing it. The only other point I'll make is that a number of our employer clients have, if it's a university system, for example, they have people for a long time that are employees and have dependents. And so we've tried to support them. University of Colorado has a program called Brussels to Muscles, and it starts with adolescents. And, they're going to have these dependents on their self-insured health plan for 13 or 14 years because the population of employees doesn't change that frequently. And so we're completely supportive of all those efforts, plus what can we do within our employer population to get to the same demographic and have it happen soon so it can become a lifestyle that then just becomes routine and you carry it through.
Sadly, we have come to the end of our AFI celebration. Weren't these guys great? So thank you so much, especially to our esteemed guests who shared their wisdom today. We're especially thankful for Governor Hickenlooper to stop by in his very busy schedule. I know we're all feeling more inspired to make a difference in our communities when we return home. At the end of today's session, Liz and I are going to award 2 more ACSM Champion Awards. And I'll remind you that they go to individuals and organizations that support the college's mission by actively championing the benefits of physical activity, fitness, and healthy lifestyles within our communities. Deputy Mayor Happy Haynes, thank you for your leadership in the city of Denver and all of your important work with the Denver Department of Parks and Recreation. Denver is a model for other cities to study and emulate its key programs and policies. Congratulations. Jeff Sipick, we would like to share this award with the Anthem Foundation for the amazing partnership and support we've had for the last 10 years. Thank you to Anthem and to the Anthem Foundation for being a business leader championing healthy communities across the nation. Congratulations. And finally, thanks to all of you for joining us for this inspiring session and to celebrate the American College of Sports Medicine's American Fitness Index 10th anniversary. Now it's time for us to use these findings from this year's data report for action promoting good health and physical activity when we return to our own communities. ACSM truly believes that this is a call to action for our nation. We must address the physical inactivity and obesity epidemic as a united front, working together to make a difference. As ACSM members, your expertise can support local coalitions in advocating for evidence-based policies and efforts that proactively support making the healthy choice the easy choice for all residents in a community. Please go to AmericanFitnessIndex.org, download the report, see what you can do to make a difference in your community. Thank you so much for being here.